Hello and welcome back to the channel. Anyways, in today's video we are going to make a Geen costume from Bungo Stray Dogs. So for this costume we are going to be using stuff that I bought at the thrift store and a wig that I already have because I am supposed to be doing a shoot on Saturday. It is Thursday afternoon. I work tomorrow and I work today. So I've only got about 6 hours to play with to actually make this. So let's see how much I actually get done. Yeah, let's go over the things that I have. I have this black bed sheet. That's gonna be the coat. I have a gray top because she wears gray top. Then she has some purple sleeves and I didn't feel like making purple sleeves. So here's a shirt. I'm gonna cut the sleeves off. And I have some white fabric lying around to make her mask. And then I have a pair of pants lying around that I'm just gonna use for black pants, and that should cover all of the clothes. And then for the wig, I think I'm using, yes, there we go. So I have a lot of wigs, and also there was definitely no time for me to buy another black wig. So this is a Shilian wig from Heaven Official's Blessing, and we're gonna rip him apart and turn him into something else. Because I was already gonna sell it because I have a new Shilian wig that's brown. This one is black, and Shilian does not have black hair. So let's get into it before my phone runs out of storage.
So I initially filmed the styling of the wig and then realized I hated the style that I initially put into it, and so I restyled it again. So what you see here is the second styling of the wig. I started off by cutting off the sleeves right at the top so I would have as much room as possible to work with, and check the fit, see if I wanted to take it in so I could make it really tight against my arm so it'd stay up. And then I took a Sharpie and marked out where my arm is. I used that initial line to mark out where I would sew, and sewed directly on that line. This made the sleeve fit very snugly to me, which was exactly what I was going for. I checked the fit and I really liked it. And then I went about cutting off the excess fabric on the inside so there was no extra bulk. Then I folded over the top edge and sewed it down so there was no raw edge. I used a zigzag stitch for all of these seams here so that way it remained stretchy because the fabric I used from the shirt was a stretchy material. Next up is the shirt. She has 3 little lines in the front, so on the inside of the shirt I pinned where I was going to sew the lines, and then I just sewed that down the front of the shirt. I did not use a zigzag stitch here, I just used a straight stitch. And then I turned it right side out to see how it looks, and was slightly disappointed.
Wow, you can't even see it on camera. I'm gonna film myself.
Now for this project, I do have a dress form, and I do use it quite a lot throughout. If you don't have a dress form, that's okay, you can do this on yourself. I was using a fitted sheet for the fabric, and so I went about removing all of the elastic and squaring it out. Then I laid the fabric out on the floor and I modeled it for you. I was really tired, I had worked 8 hours. I drew up a very terrible sketch of the idea I had going forward, and I used that as a reference. I folded the fabric in half and cut off the top rectangles so that way I had a square piece of fabric to work with. I saved those extra rectangles of fabric so I could use them to make the hood. I am a notorious fabric hoarder, so you know I kept those. I didn't have the time or the fabric to make a mock-up, so I laid out a jacket that I know fits me and then cut around it with a little extra room for seam allowance and used that as the actual jacket that I ended up making the finished jacket out of. For a lot of the patterns that I make, I usually end up using pieces of clothing that I know fit me and using that as like a base. I highly suggest sitting down and looking at your articles of clothing if it's similar to what you want to make, because it's very helpful and the pattern already exists and you can follow what somebody else has done. Next, I turned turned the fabrics right side together and folded in half just to make sure that everything matched. Then I took what would be the front section and I folded it in half and used that edge to cut down the front so that way it would have an opening in the front. Then I went about sewing the seams together. I always start with the shoulders, it's the best place to start first. And then I sewed from the top to the bottom of the side seams. Always start at the top and work your way down. Don't start from the bottom and work your way up. Then your fabric will be mismatched and it will pull weirdly. The tension will pull the fabric out of square and stuff. Here you can see I'm taking the rectangles of fabric that I left over. I took 2 of them, folded them together, and I folded them into squares and cut them into a square. And that's what we're going to make the hood out of. So that way I don't have to have visible hem at the front edge of the hood. I always double line or line my hoods for any of the hoods that I make. So what I did is I put those 2 squares of fabric together, opened them up, and then sewed 3 of the sides together, and then left 1 side open. Then I clipped the corners so that way the corners would be crisp. Always remember to clip your corners and clip your curves so that way they are more crisp. Next, I folded the hood in half and I sewed up the back edge. To make the rounded corner at the top so it doesn't have a weird point at the top, I simply went back in and sewed a curve into the top, and then I removed any excess. Then I went through and sewed the final bottom edge of the hood so that way the 2 pieces of fabric wouldn't move around when I was attaching it to the coat. Then I went through and hemmed the front edges of the coat. I did a rolled hem so that way there was no exposed edges, and just to make it nice and pretty. Next I put the garment on the dress form and I pinned the hood in place to make sure it all fit correctly because I very much eyeballed everything. I did not measure anything. I did put a couple pleats in it so that way it fit around the collar correctly. Because this was a very quick project and I knew it didn't have to be perfect, I didn't make myself make it perfect. I just kind of did what I wanted, and if it didn't look amazing the first time, I wasn't going to sweat it. Besides, her coat is very ragged anyways, so I kind of wanted that fresh, raggedy feel. Then I sewed the hood onto the jacket. Very basic stuff, just removed my pins as I went along. Sometimes I do leave the pins in. Don't necessarily do that, but you can. It's not the end of the world if you do. I removed the very top portion of the sleeve of the shirt that I bought to use as a pattern to make the sleeves for the jacket because I really didn't feel like making a new pattern. So I just placed that down on the fabric and went ham basically to make sure I had like the correct sleeve. I did 1 short sleeve and then 1 really long sleeve because her jacket has this weird long sleeve on one side, short sleeve on the other, and I just curved it at the bottom and kind of made sure that it looked pretty okay. Her sleeve is kind of interesting, so I did make 2 of the small portions at the top and then the droop sleeve that attaches to one of those small portions of the sleeves, and then I sewed those together, making sure that it was open first, and then I would sew the actual like inseams together. So I'm sorry if I'm bad at explaining what I did. I filmed this like several months ago and I'm just going back through and editing it now. Anyways, then I went through and sewed the inside seams together with the right sides of the fabric together. Then I painstakingly pinned the sleeves into the arm size of the jacket, and I had to be very careful about this because I wanted to make sure everything fit, and I did not know if everything was going to fit because I had not made a mock-up, obviously. And it surprisingly all fit perfectly, and sometimes you just have to wing it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. This time I was very glad it worked because I did not have the time to remake it. Using a reference image as a guide, I put my little coat onto my dress form and I raised it up so I could see the bottom, and I cut a whole bunch of little triangles into the bottom of the jacket and into the bottom of the sleeves because her jacket looks like it's been all torn up and it really looks like it's been through something. You do not need to be precise with this. You do not need to make it look pretty. Just kind of go ham, cut at it, and it'll be fine. For making her mask, I made a basic paper pattern and I had some string left over and some white fabric, and I sewed 2 layers of the mask together. Because I was on a time crunch, I didn't end up doing the kind of chevron pattern that's on the front of her mask. I just decided to make it a basic plain white mask. I don't know how to explain how I made it, I just kind of did it. So if you want, you can look up how to make masks. There was plenty of tutorials made during the pandemic, and I have made a lot of masks. And if you really want, I can make a tutorial on just how to make masks. Or you could buy a little white mask, it's very easy too. I guess if the footage is helpful enough, you could follow the footage and figure it out for yourself, because I don't know how to explain how to make a mask. I just kind of did it. I was very tired. This was like a couple hours before the shoot. This was the morning of, so I was very much, okay, get it done and make sure to film it. And future editor me could do what I wanted, and future editor me is unhappy with myself for how badly I don't know how to explain making a mask. Anyways, the big reveal.